Okay, so in working with your sketch, you don't need to get everything right. But I want to get kind of the general spacing kind of figured out before I bring it over into Illustrator. So, now that I kind of know my approach, I might move around some things, like the bow tie. I might duplicate that onto its own layer, and instead of just sketching it freehand, try to composite it in and erase away from some of these other elements. Oh, not the eraser. Let's do this. So maybe I don't want the bow tie in the exact same position. Maybe I don't want the ear to be all intact, but maybe I want this to be the jawbone. So I'm going to use what I can from Colonel Sanders here. Have some fun with it. And I'll usually just take a white brush, or if I'm sketching in my sketchbook, just a whiteout pen, and start cutting away at the shape, trying to make it more informed, more interesting. I don't know if I really need these back teeth. And I'll probably mess with that ear some more. Shrink it down a little. And let's move that bow tie. I don't want it, even though it's a mashup, I don't want it to rely too much on one logo, like the Colonel Sanders placement. So I'm just going to tilt that bow tie a little bit so it's more symmetrical. That's actually kind of a nice way, just the whites moving through. Clean it up somewhat. But let's see. I like what it does to the jaw there, so I'm going to keep that. All right, so this is a good sketch. I like how the glasses actually aren't even in there, but since they're lined up with his eye holes, it suggests it just the same. Okay, so I've got a zombie Colonel Sanders mashup here. I might want to put a little bit more detail in the forehead. You know, show some of that zombie texture. Make him look a little angrier. Something like that. But These are things I can play with in Illustrator. So this is just a sketch. Maybe finish off his ear, make it kind of drippy, look like it's hanging off. Solidify some of these outlines. Cut away others. So obviously sketching is an important part of this, but now this is the new thing. Using a new program, using Illustrator. Because you can see, trying to get a clean logo in Photoshop is difficult because edges are soft and blurry and not always consistent. So I'm going to take my sketch, I'm going to save it because I'm going to upload this. First save it as a Photoshop file, but if you're just scanning in your own sketch or digitally compositing it, now I'm going to crop down around it. And I'm just going to save it as a JPEG. Not a JPEG 2000. I'll call it cropped, because I'll probably want to put my full sketch up when I turn it in. Okay, so I have this now. Now I close Photoshop, and we're going to say goodbye to Photoshop for quite a while. I know, it's sad. And we're going to close it all the way so that we're not wasting that processing power by quitting it. Now we're going to open up Adobe Illustrator. I would still keep all your references open. And this is our first time playing with this program. And playing with it is what we need to do. So in some ways, I encourage you to have 2 Illustrator files that you're working on. One where you're just playing and one where you're trying to do the assignment. And how do I open up a project in Illustrator? Well, I can right-click it off of the desktop like this and say Open with Illustrator. Or I can open it within Illustrator by saying File, Open. But when it comes in, it does this weird thing. This is my sketch, and when it comes in, it will be, if I click on it, it knows that this is not a vector. It knows it's a raster file. So it will want me to immediately change it into a vector file. And I can do that if I want. This is called live tracing. And if I trace it and I just use whatever it decides, well, no, I'll pick. I want it to be a black and white logo, right? So I'm going to choose black and white logo, say OK. And it's going to try to convert it into a vector. And lo and behold, especially because I used mostly compositing instead of just my sketches, but it did a lot of my work for me. These are all perfect vector shapes now, which means they are not made of pixels. They are specific, but the problem is it also takes away a lot of options I have. I could go to the image trace options, which are up here, go to advanced, and say ignore white, which I would recommend you do, so that it's only the black shapes. And then if I liked it, I could say expand, and it would turn all of those black shapes into vectors with anchors and everything. So when I select them, you'll see all the anchor points, and then each anchor point can be modified and changed and worked with. But we don't understand Illustrator enough yet to make sense of that. So I know that that approach is possible for me. And this is basically what I'm going for as my black and white logo. It works well, scaled. But I want to know how I can actually build images within Illustrator. So instead of live tracing it, I can go back just by hitting Command-Z over and over again, like a Word document, because Illustrator does not take much. And instead, I am going to make a new layer going to layers here. If you don't see it in your windows, go to window layers. And I'm going to build a layer on top of my sketch layer. Then I'm going to select my sketch layer with this little circle next to it. And I can double click on it, and I'm going to say dim image to 50%. OK. And that's like putting tracing paper over your layer, your sketch layer, so that now on layer 2, I'll lock it as well. On layer 2 now, I'll be able to draw my vector shapes. The Digital 2 mentorship presentation, which I'll also post, will give us some hints on this as well. But this is how I like to use Illustrator. I like to use the pencil tool. And I use the pencil tool to draw the edges. It's like a scissors through black paper. You can double click on the pencil tool and you can set it to be either more accurate to your movements on your tablet or more smooth. I like it a little bit more smooth, within about 6 pixels. It's because I can be jittery when I draw it and it will automatically smooth it out for me. So let me show you what I mean. So first, let me get his hair. I have to draw on both sides of the shape. And it's just like inking. You try to have an even, smooth line. But what's nice about Illustrator is it can always change. So I can make little changes right now just to see how they look. But then I'm not stuck with anything. I'm gonna add a little bit more gore to the ear here. And I am basically cutting out my first black shape. And then when I get close to the end, you'll see a little circle appears next to the pencil, and that means I've completed that shape. Now I've got to decide what to do with that shape. Do I fill it in or not? And I'm going to fill it in with black, and I don't want any outline. So for my outline window here, I put none. And for my fill outline, I put black. It's the most basic way to use Illustrator. And notice how even though I drew it a little bit more complicatedly, it smoothed it out for me because of the settings I had. But this is what I love about the pencil tool. As long as it's selected, I can go back in and recut it. As long as I start on the path and end on the path. And if it's being a little too smooth, I can push it to be more accurate. So it captures more of my strange movements. But of course you want your logo to be pretty smooth. And over here, actually I liked it where it was. Okay. So this is my favorite tool in Illustrator. And if I turn off my sketch layer, you can see that now I've started, just by using the pencil tool, to create a really clean black cutout that's going to start my image. And I'm doing this all on layer 2 because I locked the other layer. We do one more shape here. I'm using my sketch as my guideline. I can add little bits of intricacy if I want, and then I need to fill it in with black. There I go. I can do my next shape. Just a little liver spot kind of shape here. Fill it in with black. Another one. But I always have to finish the path by going all the way around so it's fully contained.